Well, we continue to pay tribute to former Minister Pravin Gordhan and reflect on his life and times as well. Iman Rappetti is at the home of Pravin Gordhan's daughter here in Johannesburg, and she joins us live now. Iman, good morning to you. Also a very somber morning indeed.
Masa, indeed, we've seen an outpouring of well wishes and support, not only for Pravin Gordhan and his career, but also for the family. And we have been granted a really rare opportunity to sit down with them. It's only been a few short hours since the nation found out, and they were at the bedside when all of this happened. And we want to check in with them and see how they're feeling, but also to share a side of a man who was so public in his career and his accomplishments, a side that we don't often get to see as South Africans. This is the side as a father, a husband, and a family man. And Priyesha, his youngest daughter, who's accompanied by her fiancé, James, are joining me for a short sit-down. Priyesha, good morning to you.
Good morning.
First of all, accept our deepest sympathies, our condolences. I know that it's only been a few hours, and the family was with your dad when he passed away. You were all there. Would you like to share with us how you're feeling in this moment?
I think it's still feeling quite surreal, and I think there is a great part of my processing that's still in the denial phase. He had just retired, and we were expecting to have a lot more time with him. I think if you've heard him speak anyway in the last few years, his priority was to spend time with his family. So I feel like in a way we were robbed of a lot of time and moments with him. And that's something that we're grappling with because the loss is immense. I've lost my best friend. And, one sort of wonders how you continue, especially for my mum, who's lost her soulmate. And we've lost the anchor of our family. And I think the coming times will be difficult for us to navigate, but I also think he has taught us and given us the tools to do that with.
You're a medical practitioner, and the last couple of days have been really tough, being by his bedside, watching his condition develop in the way that it has. Sadly, with his demise in the early hours of this morning, you would have known things the family might not have known. Talk to us about what was going through your heart and mind. If you want to go back as far as the initial diagnosis earlier this year to the point where, his condition fails quite rapidly.
So I think what obviously most South Africans do know is that my father was a deeply private man, and he had actually been struggling with chronic health issues from 2016, which is coincidentally the year that the majority of the attacks on him by the Hawks, the former president, the NPA, etc., started. And it was a testament to his fortitude, his resilience, and to his dedication to his country that he continued despite having those ailments. I have been privileged to be a medical officer and be with him on his journey. I have tried to be with him every step of the way, and it is a great source of heartache for me that I was not able to pull him through this. He had just retired, and he was having very non-specific symptoms that were not really pointing to something insidious, and it was actually on a very routine scan that we found this incidental mass. And by the time we had found it, it was pretty advanced. But my father he's not a quitter, and he's a fighter, and he was a fighter until the very end, and we were committed to fighting this horrible disease. Unfortunately, on Friday, after one of his treatments, he started having some abdominal pain and developed a condition, what is called gallstone pancreatitis. And that put a lot of stress on his already weakened body. And so things moved very quickly after that. I was telling my family that, I have an intimate understanding of all of the results that came out. And as a clinician, I understood prognostically what that meant, but as a daughter, I couldn't accept that. And I still can't. But he told me that whilst he doesn't have the means to fight anymore, I need to continue with dignity and integrity. And just on a side note, a testament to his character is there was a celebration for the NIC on Sunday. And like I said, he became ill on Friday. He, myself, my aunt, my partner, my mum were up writing his speech that he was supposed to give, or his message, up until 11:30 at night, and I was actually discouraging him from doing it. But he told me that this is his life's work, and this is something that he needs to do, not must do, he needs to do it. And a few hours later, he was hospitalized. So I think that's a testament to the warrior that he was and how committed he was to our country and to its people.
That speech, where is it? Was it delivered, sent?
It was delivered. It was the 130th.
Because he was the founder leader of the NIC.
He was one of the leaders, yes.
Yeah. And we know later, historically, through his work in pulling together other networks, community-based networks, that's what ultimately led to the founding of the UDF.
Yes.
But I want to go back. You said something really important, Priyesha, in 2016 was when his health issues started to manifest. And you believe strongly as a family that coincided with the personal travails that he was under. We know in 2017, things really escalated. He was called a spy by the ANC Youth League's Colin Maine. That was when he was axed as well as a finance minister. Do you believe that it was these events that in some way, I'm not sure from a clinical perspective, whether that contributed to his adverse health? Is this what contributed to his ultimate demise?
I think as resilient and as formidable as he was, that the incessant onslaught of these attacks, these unjustified, completely baseless attacks, really did affect his psyche. And although he didn't show it, not to me, not to my mum, because he always told us that he went through detention, he went through torture, and there comes a time when you're being tortured where you make a decision that you will rather die than give up any information. And when you cross that line where you would give your life up for this country, these attacks, you manage them with a lot more strength. But having said that, and having been with him, it was my final year of medical school when that was happening. And reading something in the newspaper about the possibility of him being led away in handcuffs was extremely distressing. And I think people forget that public figures have families and that they are human beings. And my father was an honest, completely principled, unimpeachable man. And to have those attacks launched by people with their own agendas, who did not have the country and its people's best interest at heart, and wanted to malign him, to destroy his integrity, to capture key institutions, just to feed their own pockets, it was an immense thing for him to deal with. So whilst as a clinician I can't categorically say, do I believe that the stress that he endured ultimately led to this? Yes, I do.
We saw what happened publicly. And there's that side. But there's the way that all of this manifests in your home, in your family. Would you be able to share with us what he said to you? I was speaking to your mom a short time ago, and again, just so grateful to the family for allowing us this opportunity and to place on record for the country that these are issues and areas you wanted to cover this morning. So we're doing this with your permission. There is a great deal of triage, in a sense, emotional triage and resilience that had to form inside the home. Talk to us about how you guys supported him.
I think what's also important to note is my mother herself is an activist, and together they were quite a formidable pair. And I've always said she was his unofficial advisor, even his unofficial DG. And together they were a truly remarkable team. And they provided each other with immense support. And I think, discounting myself, and I played a very secondary role, I must give credit to my mother for getting him through that period, because the support from her, and I could see it in him. I mean, he would come home and immediately just debrief her on everything that had happened that day. So if there's anyone who was actually more up to date than maybe even people in cabinet, would be my mother. And I think the lessons that they learned as activists, the lessons that, you know, they learned through the struggle about discipline. My father will always teach me about the need to know principle to stop me from asking any more questions than I needed to know answers to. So those periods gave them remarkable tools that I am hoping I have managed to glean some information from and continue in my own life. But he was first and foremost a father. He was fiercely protective of me, which is why he wanted to keep me out of the spotlight. But with this face and the surname, people put two together sometimes. And, you know, the humility with which he conducts himself and conducted himself, it gave me an inner strength to cope, just seeing him. And his teachings are, you always act in the best interest of the country and its people. His sacrifices were done in that way. So going through those attacks were knowingly done. We made that decision as a family that we would endure, because we knew that he still had a lot to contribute and that the country needed him. And we were willing to do that. So as difficult as it was a decision that we took as a family, and we weathered that storm together.
Did you ever get the sense at any time that he thought, this is enough, I'm giving up?
I think that this is enough very often, but the giving up, no. Because every time I think a situation arose where he felt overwhelmed or felt inundated with stress, it didn't shut him down, it picked him up. And he will always tell me he is a problem solver, he looks for solutions. And those kinds of stresses only gave him more challenges to apply himself to. And I mean, I'm not nearly curious enough for him, I'm maybe a bit intellectually lazy. But he was a fierce intellectual, constantly stimulated. So now I don't ever think that at any point would he have ever said, I give up. Because he didn't do that until his last moments, and he's just a fighter. He's a soldier and a fighter.
Take us back into the home, the face of Pravin Gordhan that we didn't get to see, your dad. Share with us some anecdotes and stories if you can, Priyesha.
One that I do enjoy sharing is, especially when it comes to, you know, when the EFF make claims that we have 600 million rand stored somewhere in Canada. When I was in primary school, my primary school was just down the road from SARS, so I used to often go to his offices and mess around with markers on his board, and I needed to print something for school. And when we were leaving that day, he gave me R2.50 to give back so that I could pay for the paper that I used. I didn't take home any markers, no highlighters, nothing. So he didn't take 1 cent from this country. And that always sticks with me. And that is, I think, one of the first times I really saw him as a hero, because as an 8-year-old, I think R2.50 is not a big deal. I'm going to take the paper. But he made sure that I gave the R2.50 to his secretary before we left that day. My father and I are incredibly close. Like I said in the beginning, he's my best friend. And I am a committed public servant because of him. he was known for his intellectualism, his strategic thinking, but for me, he had the best, most kind and generous heart that people often seem to forget when they're talking about the minister and the former commissioner. We used to stay up at night when my mom had to go to bed. We watched the news, used to watch funny movies. He loved rom-coms, which you might not think, but the cheesy rom-coms as well, the Hallmark rom-coms. He flipped through books by Gramsci, by Marx, just for fun. He was ticklish. And I mean, I've been feeling strange about sharing him with the country because as much as I understand and am proud of his profile, he was first and foremost an amazing father. I suffered with migraines severely as a child, and he was commissioner of SARS then. And should I get a migraine, no matter where he was, he rushed home and with his arthritic, painful hands, massaged my head for hours to provide me some relief, because he knew that my mom didn't do it right and that I needed him. He was at every awards giving, he was on my school's governing body. He had to be co-opted, but he was present in every single facet of my life. And as someone who was so dedicated to his work into the country, you would think that that didn't provide him enough time or mental space or energy to be that present at home. But he was, and he was our whole life. And he gave me 31 years of the most beautiful relationship, and I got to see two soulmates, and it helped me to learn what I want in a partner and how I appreciate humility, integrity more than anything else.
Well, James, you've got a high bar. You've got a high bar to reach. What are you going to miss the most? I mean, you've said so much and you've shared so beautifully, so many wonderful stories about your dad. When you think, and again, I imagine there's a cognitive dissonance in the fact that you're speaking about him in the past tense now. What are you going to miss about him most?
I had made a note on my phone shortly after the cancer diagnosis, just listing things to keep me strong. And I think anyone who knows me knows that my father was my entire life. He was my inspiration. His internal optimism made me an internal optimist. And it's hard to pick one thing to miss about him because he was just this giant of a man. But I will miss the future that I was planning to have with him, that I didn't get to take him on the railways that he wanted to go on, that he didn't get to see the Northern Lights. He visited more hotel rooms and conference centers than actually doing any real traveling. And so I think I will miss what could have been, but I am immensely honored and privileged to be his daughter, and in that I have a great sense of peace and strength because I know what he would want for me moving forward. So it's hard to say what one thing I would miss because he was so prevalent in every aspect of my life. It's almost trying to dissect a whole life and pick one thing. He was my entire existence. So how to move forward without the person that gave your life meaning and who was your daily inspiration is hard to say. Can
we go back to the last days, Priyesha, with your permission? things that he would have said to you in those final moments? I know one of the statements put out was about people keeping up the fight and having done a good job. Maybe share with us some of the things that he said in his final moments.
So he had a large number of people, comrades, friends, that came to see him, and I didn't leave his side throughout that process, obviously to give him some privacy. But, you know, the main thing was that his work here is now done, but that the fight to provide South Africans with better lives must continue. And that's what he said to almost every person that walked into that room, that they need to stay focused, they need to work for the betterment of this country, and that whilst he's made his contribution, he wants people to still keep fighting. And I think people forget that he was an activist first and foremost. He was never a politician. So that is also what he told me. Like I said, I'm also a committed public servant, and I believe it is because I've had the parents that I've had, and I'm deeply committed to this country. And he was reinforcing that in me, and how to continue my life without him, but with the lessons that he's instilled in me, and just continuing to make him proud. Which will always be knowing that my dad was proud of me, I think will always be my greatest achievement. So it was conversations like that, that in spite of this trauma and difficulty, you keep up your resilience and you remember the bigger picture and the goal that we're fighting towards, and that's this country, and that's what he dedicated his life to. And he wants others to follow in his footsteps. He was never a career politician. He never angled for any position. He just gave of himself every day for this country, and that's what he was trying to inspire everyone who walked into that room to do. And for me, I read a quote that said that parents teach you everything except how to live without them. And I think in those final days, he was struggling. It took a lot of his energy, but he did want to see people. And I think what he wanted me to know is that I can continue. He's given me the strength to do so, and that he'll always be with me.
I know it's only been a few hours, Priyesha, and the family's still getting to grips with the event itself. Is there anything that you have maybe initially decided around funeral arrangements and things like that? There are lots of people who would like to know.
So as far as my dad's wishes, he wanted a very simple, understated ceremony, which is in keeping with his entire personality. But I think he also recognized that he is, I recognize that he's a hero and he deserves a hero send-off. So planning is still in place. There are comrades that are working on getting the appropriate logistics together. He will be having a state funeral within the coming week, just to make sure that the president can attend, because he does have other international commitments with the UN. So it will most likely happen next week, Thursday, but that's a tentative. I don't have any confirmation, but he does have a team of his comrades that are working on that.
We're so appreciative, Priyesha, James, that you let us in. I know there's so much work to do today, so many other family that want to commiserate with you and sympathize with you. We know that you need to be there for your mom as well, so we appreciate you giving us this time. Thank you so much, and once again, accept our condolences.
Thank you.
Thank you. Masa, with that, it's back to you in our studio.